So what we've done in the classes is to replicate all of the weapons that you would use. This is a sword, a wooden sword. No sharp blades on it. Relatively blunt point, unless you absolutely got poked in the eye, which we're not going to encourage or show how to do. The same handles, nice weight, because again you're going to learn about the three-dimensional holes around the sword. There's nothing else where you can do this with. You can't do it with a golf club or a tennis racket, because it hasn't got that same purpose of necessary ambidexterity. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So if you can do these sort of things with your shoulders, I know when I give you a bigger weapon that you can do these sort of things with the same. It's about the torquing of the spine to make the weapon do what it's going to do in part of that cut. So these can be moved around in time and space very easily, but replicate the same drawing techniques. Just pointing around. The scabbards, you know, the way you would open the body from kneeling positions and of course the ambidexterity of it. You've got to be able to draw from this side equally the same, and that equalises the patterns in your omnidirectional bubble, a sphere of movement. But that's the sort of tools we're going to be using, so that you can replicate these kind of movements that are defensive with the sword, but also when you work in the spiral from the spine, it's the only way that this works. So it's not that trying to get around your head, it's the spiral up on that saccade and a spiral down on that saccade, and it's understanding spiralic saccades, not just the normal saccade of walking. And I think these resources are the only way to actually show those, but not in the Budo form where people are too intent on learning the Budo and getting the technique. This is not about it, it's understanding how and why it can become a technique, what's its basis for origin and movement, coupling up of long arc, short arc, understand the differences, using the right sort of corticospinal strength, understanding the visual cortex of the brain, how the spine moves over its curves. That's what the classes are. Budo is the metaphor.
Yeah. So all of these skills that you're using would have been used in that way at one point in time.
Absolutely. So
that's why
children, we learn how to draw a sword.
Yeah.
You know, small children, because they were going to follow his dad. Plus, if he was the blacksmith, he'd have to defend the village. So all children would learn, but they would do it in play.
Yeah.
So they'd have bokkens and bokken fights, but it was in play. It wasn't like this technique, that technique, that technique. But you had to learn. There was different patterns that people would show you that this defence would then open up for this attack. But then you lose those techniques. So there were your Kiyanapos and I forget what they're called in karate, but you've got set sequences, that two-partner, 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 two-partner scenarios.
Right.
For me, there is no such thing as a two-partner, three-step, four-step, five-step scenario. Because if you're strangling me and I do this to your throat, and step two's whatever step one made happen. You know, you could just fall flat in your face, so I've got to come and get hold of your hand and put a wrist lock on next, because that's step two. There is no step two. You know, depending on what diagonal I bring this, I might have to bring it under your arms, and then bring it over the top of your head. There is no scenario for, do you understand that? So you've got a pair of arms here, gripping, and you've come underneath totally with your blade. Scabbard's gone now, but his arms are still there. Now they're not, now you've got his neck. In those three movements. Hey, oh yeah, hua! Put this here. Now you've got a stab. Now you've got a defence. You can do anything with it. But these are the important things. These are working the skin folds. And there's only these skills left that still work those skin folds bilaterally. These are the only skills left that still do it. Even farmers have become adapted to using machinery and the likes. So all the old gardening tools would have used all those skin folds in all those directions, and not have long arc, tension coupled bodies behind them. And that's what's lost. And this is the only place where you've got a metaphor of perfection of all those directions and proof and evidence of all those directions historically recorded. So that to me is the important message of Budo. To be able to pass it on in this way. to help injuries and rehabilitate people. They need martial movement, but they would never aspire to come in this direction because of its reputation in some people's eyes. You know, martial is martial. It's tough. It's aggressive. But this is none of those things. This is how we survive. This is survival. This is survival. All of the time I was studying Natsumi, I was studying his movement patterns, because that was my bias with the active balance. I was already studying movement patterns of the ancient Chinese and Qi development and Qi movement and organ and stretching, as to whether these things actually worked. So that was my direction. So when I saw the way he moved, and I could see the martial in it, impressed by the martial side of it, but I'd seen karate the best in the world. This man moved in a totally different way, and then you realise how evasive his movements were, as opposed to blocking. He just never was where the attack was. He was always doing something else and controlling at one point, and saying it's coming from your walk, it's coming from your spinal movements. So that was the biggest study all the way through. So understanding anatomy, understanding the biomechanics of the spine from people like Eli, people like Janet, people like Sullivan, showing the complexity of the makeup of the body. All of those things were to study this one thing. So I felt that I had a good understanding of that. But when Lean had come, which is now just over a good year ago, he gave me a total dialogue of he could see from his expertise what I was actually doing and what you weren't seeing. And that made me see with a different set of eyes, but also give me the dialogue of the long arc, short arc, the gear train. When I put that inside of what I was already doing, it made mechanical sense in the terms that I could speak in a tensegris manner, because that's tensegral language. Those concepts are inside of tensegri. At last I'd found an explanation, always utilising tensegri, but not using that kind of a dialogue. Now I've got that dialogue of long arc and torque and trajectory from the facets, all proven by Eli and Janet. I can see the whole dynamics in different ways, how we move with the spine inside the walk. So it's not just in your walk, and we don't turbine from just the spine. Spinal movement is body movement, and body movement is just totally tension coupled through long arcs. It can't do anything else. It's omnidirectional in all of its multi-choice. And what you've got to have is that multi-choice. So say you had a situation where you couldn't draw the sword that way, right, because you were restricted there, you take the scabbard off it. Now, that might sound like a simple logic, but it's not. When you teach that to people, they wouldn't think of that. Or, you know, another sort of logic, you're running down and you haven't got time to take the sword out, but it's got a wooden scabbard. So you'd actually strike the person on the top of the head. The wood would split and you'd still cut. You've lost your scabbard, but you've just won the fight. It's that kind of mentality, which is very survivalist. And so using the body in that way, there isn't time for reasoning. There is not time for reasoning. You've got to use that unconscious reflex, but the reflex is actually trained to omnidirectional in what that outcome can be. And I was trained very pedestrian, very step-like, very sequential, very form-like. In fact, we can't grade things unless we have that measurement, and everyone wants to be graded in that way, to pass an examination, pass a standard of criteria. I understand that legally that's a necessity, but it doesn't make the technique right. We're losing this omnidirectional movement that the children have, and we let them lose. And then we're putting back on climbing walls and the likes to give them it back. But what about the mid-piece? You know, that should be perpetuated, understanding how they move and how they evolve. The pre-cortical stage of a child can take up to about 5 years before it's fully ambivalent. You know, and we're not giving them the right kinds of exercise at that very pre-formative stage. That also forms your brain. I think that's where all the dyslexias and dyspraxias and all these movement behaviour problems are coming from, is they're not locomoted correctly from that age onwards. So that's important.